So let's get started with yet another review here with Hans from the Pro Feedback community. Many of you guys have seen him on my videos. He is an amazing composer. He has a lot of experience and he has a lot of amazing, helpful insights into how to compose music, particularly music that contains orchestral elements. And this is definitely going to be right up his alley. This is a track from Alexander Dillon, one of our Pro Feedback members. This is called Unstoppable. It's a hybrid orchestral track that he submitted for our review. So we're going to click play right here. I'm going to have Hans sort of take the lead on it, let us know what he thinks is working about it, maybe something that can be improved upon it, and then I'll sort of follow it up at the very end with any additional thoughts that I think might be helpful. So let's go ahead and get started and take a listen to Unstoppable. Here we go. All right, Alexander, man, a really intense track. I like the energy of this one, and I do know how hard and difficult it is to create hybrid music. I've done a little bit of myself, so it is a very difficult task to try to bring an orchestral sort of trailer style track, but infuse the sort of rock, metal, guitar and drums that you have done. So it's a very difficult thing to do, but it's worth going into this direction for sure because not many producers can do it very well. I would say, we're going to let Hans obviously get into his notes, but I would say your energy and the direction you're going in is the right direction because it's definitely high energy. It feels really intense and energetic. So I think you're going to find that is a really licensable direction to go in. However, I do think there's some focus issues we'll probably dive into that you just need to sort of take the talent that you already have and sort of learn how to harness it so that it's more focused. But let's go ahead, toss it over to Hans. Hans, let us know first what were you liking about this track, and then let's get into maybe some things that we can help Alexander improve upon.
Right. Hey, Alexander, that is a great track. I really, mainly like the energy of it. It's really, really good. The aspect with hybrid music, I'm looking at this from a chef side, right? Like I'm a chef too. And I like the idea of a stew. So if you think about a stew, uh, um, and then look at hybrid, that is kind of where we are going. In general, I find that the hard part with doing hybrid is also like mixing, obviously, because all these instruments that are come in, and you use a lot of the instrument. You have a full orchestra, including horn section. I heard kind of like a full drum set, also like other, orchestral drums. Let's see, you have voices in there, you have a distorted electric guitar in there, you have a distorted bass in there. Um, so it's like you kind of used the whole kitchen drawer for your spicing up the thing, which makes it really hard in terms of the EQing, because you have to, before you start doing that, you have to kind of more or less define the roles. You have to define who is gonna take care of what. And now roles, there are actually not many roles there, right? So you have your lead role, more in the upper frequencies generally. Then you have like kind of your high mids, your low mids, and you have your bass. And what I feel that certainly you haven't done that means like there's instruments fighting for their role and saying, "Hey, just check me out," right? And that is usually the fact when you do not work um, after a template or after a reference. And for you, I would really, really recommend looking at some references. There are wonderful references out there in that hybrid form with orchestra, that you can lay out your things like that. You can lay out your track, and you can basically define, before you start composing even, you can define your roles. Who is all in there? Who is going to play today, right? So I found for me personally, it's too much going on with not. I can tell that she didn't have quite the clarity yet. Who is doing what and why are they doing it, right? If I go into details a little bit, on the horns, I can hear that you just play them like a keyboard. Means like you hold the notes and that's it. The horn players don't work like that. They need to breathe. And even though it's a lot is going on, and one might think you don't hear if a horn player takes that split second of a break, yet it adds to the liveliness of the track. Um, then there was throughout the track you had several rhythmic things were going on. The one that came out the most was when the bass came in, when you had kind of the bass playing, and it was doing some wild 16th notes, and that's not working. I also think if you have that full orchestra like this, I don't know if I would juxtapose that with a drum set. Um, I feel the drum set, because maybe it's a sound issue. Maybe you can. I mean, if you think of the drum set for a track like this, I'm thinking more like Led Zeppelin, John Bonham, where everything is really, you have the low toms and they're really rich and stuff. But then again, if you have that, how do you make room for that in when so much is happening? So I would probably, in terms of the hybrid, I would probably do the guitars are okay, and distorted guitars work actually well with a hybrid orchestral stuff. You just have to kind of place them, you place them right and carve out a little space. The distorted bass is that gets really muddy, and as when you use that many instruments, the problem is usually your lower mid range. That's where most instruments kind of are. So anywhere between, let's say, 80 and 400, 500 hertz, that's where kind of everything is crowding up. And so it can get really muddy, which the track feels quite muddy. It needs kind of some juxtaposition to that. You need other frequencies that kind of take over a little more. Um, then if the drum set is the problem a little bit. You have these parts where you play like cymbals, or you play the hi-hat, and you have this crisp high end, which usually in an orchestra, there is, other than the percussion or the middle percussion, there's nothing there that has that kind of a high, of a hi-hat or a crash cymbal or anything like that. Now you have that in parts, and then you drop it. And then that's the moment where the whole thing falls kind of into a pit all of a sudden, because your whole high end goes away. So, if you use anything like that, you need to be sure to have it, at least it doesn't have to be consistent all the way through, but you need to be really aware when you put it in and when you take it out again. Those need to make sense in your form of the track. I thought that there was enough musical information in there. You have, there's a lot going on. The form, I liked actually the form. It's especially like towards the end after the first break, you build it up again. It has kind of like a slight trailer form. It's not that obvious yet, because I don't think you actually really looked for a reference track. That gets clearer the more you kind of start modeling it after another track, the more you see yourself like, oh, that makes sense that the form is a certain way, why that is in production music, why there's always kind of the same form. So it's not that much about this creative expression of how you check this out, and this part is great and this part is great. It's more like, um, how can you be as minimalistic as possible? And understand this right, when I say minimalistic, I don't mean like just few instruments. I mean like melodically, rhythmically concise. How can you milk a theme, so to speak? The really good composers and the tracks that are used over and over again in that regard, they have something incredibly simple. And due to the DAWs nowadays, we can just stack things up. When we want something bigger, the first thought is add something. Where I think actually your track will sound bigger if you start removing things. I would start taking things away and see, if is that still working, Uh, be radical. Take the drums away and see, is it still working? Well, you probably find not really. There are parts where you really miss it, and then you wonder, if you think about the drums as different instruments. Think about the drums is not one instrument, right? It's a bass drum, it's a snare. The drums are difficult because they kind of cover the whole spectrum. So in an orchestral setting, if you really want to use drums, I would think of it as different instruments. Think of a set of toms as one instrument, and think of the bass drum as another instrument, and the snare, same thing, and then the whole cymbal array. So it needs a little kind of a for that kind of a hybrid work. This is really like you spend a lot of work on this, and I really appreciate that. I congratulate for that. This is a lot of work doing hybrid stuff like you did there. So I know you have the dedication to put it in. Now, for if you do revisions of that, really, like, before you go and start doing things, think about it. Like, listen to it with a little distance, and then think about what you want to achieve and where you want to achieve what. Where do you want it to come up really and be energetic? Where do you want it to come down and be more cooking kind of, or on a lower temperature? That would help greatly. But other than that, really, I kind of I really appreciate you sharing this, and it's a track. You're on the right way. You just have to kind of sort a little through the kitchen drawer and figure out what to use and what maybe not to use in this case.
And that's a beautiful metaphor and analogy. And I know that some producers, I think, are mindful of that, and they can think, all right, I want my track to do this at this point, and then I want it to go to there. But if you have no idea and you're watching this video and you're like, well, I don't really have those instincts. I don't know what a track is supposed to do. That's why I'm watching this review video. How do I know that? What Hans told you, and this is the most common bit of note and feedback I give to everybody when I do my live reviews and pro feedback is, and I can tell, because you just do this long enough, you can tell, I can tell which students are using reference tracks and which ones are not. Because this one immediately, it was around here 50 seconds in, I was like, oops, no reference tracker right away, because it was pretty focused in a sort of traditional high orchestral direction as this track was evolving. But as this middle part came in, and definitely as we went to the middle where there definitely were some timing issues and it kind of almost turned into an electro rock track, it like really morphed away from where it started. I could hear that, Alexander, you were sort of reaching. You were kind of like just going on these little tangents and going in different directions. The good news for you, man, it might come across as, some criticism, but it's really good news. You're working too hard, actually, dude. You don't actually need to work this hard. You put way too much into this track. And because you did too much to it, it took it away from being licensable. As Hans was saying, it's really about less. So next time, and I would say this for everybody watching this, you too, Alexander, is next time you create your new track, do not even open up your DAW. Don't start anything, even if you're excited to do it, until you go to a library's website, go look at their music, go check out their hybrid orchestral tracks, go look at their trailer tracks, or whatever style of music you're going to compose. Get a particular track with a particular library that you want to work with, or at least you say, hey, they got high quality stuff. I want to emulate my music after theirs. And have it at least up on your browser and just follow along with it and really listen to it for 30 minutes straight over and over. Take notes. What is its structure doing? What kind of instruments is it using? How big are its dynamics? How big are its transitions? This track needs a lot more dynamic to it. It just, when these big transitions are happening, they're kind of being cranked up 1 or 2 notches, but they really need to be cranked up quite a bit, as Hans was saying, with really getting those dynamics to breathe in this track so it feels much more like either a trailer track, if that's where you're going, or even if it's just going to be orchestral hybrid. We need to squeeze a lot more dynamic and emotion out of this track. So you're on the right journey here. You're on the right path with this approach you want to do, but make sure you use those reference tracks so that you can fall in line with what actually works. As time goes on and you start to learn these structural rules and you kind of get a feel for what licensable music is supposed to be, how it's supposed to be produced, that's when you can start to bend the rules a little bit, right? But you first need to master what are the rules, how are tracks composed, what really works. So you need to kind of humble yourself to get to that point of like, all right, I'm learning this. And as I get this structure down, then I can kind of push the boundaries a little bit in terms of maybe I'll make this break a little longer, or maybe I'll do something really unexpected here. But you're doing that in the context of you have an awareness of what gets placed. So you don't want to make those creative choices and go on all these different tangents and directions thinking, well, I'm just going to create something different and unique for this library, and they're going to find value in that. Small chance, I'll be honest with you guys, very small chance that you're going to accidentally or luckily create something that's so different from what they've already accepted, and they're going to love it so much that they'll take it on. More than likely, they want something that falls in line with what they've previously already accepted and what they know. And the reason is it's a business. They know they need to have music that can get placed. So definitely take Hans' advice there. Use reference tracks. Everybody, please, please, please do that. So Hans, thank you so much, man. Alexander, I hope you found these notes useful. And for everybody else, if you want to get your tracks reviewed, you can learn more about Pro Feedback in the description box below.